Everybody take a seat, please. Good morning. I want to go ahead and apologize for how slow this is going to go this morning. One of my co-pilots sitting here, and I don't quite know what I'm going to be doing here, so y'all just bear. Oh, we got a stand-in coming. Lynn, would you be so kind as to offer up a word of thanks?
Father, we thank you for this day and your presence here with us, and pray now your wisdom and your perfect and pleasing and goodwill to be our guidance today. It's in thy name we pray.
Amen. Thank you. We will get started. Mr. Maxwell.
Mr. Chairman.
And this is HB 130.
HB 130. This is a really complicated piece of legislation. I hope I can get through this with the time allotted for us to be out here back in session.
All right, time's up. Let's go.
There's two things. It's going to extend the repeal the sunset date of the Career and Technical Education Advisory Commission. It was going to sunset on December 31st, 2012, and it's going to change the meetings so that the meeting will be once a year. That's what we've been meeting. That seems to be sufficient. This advisory commission has worked with the Department of Education in the career and technical area, discussing dual enrollment credits, career paths for students. It's made up of legislators, career and technical folks, DOE personnel. So we've been doing this for, I think, 06, and we're just asking this continue as we work towards dual enrollment and things with our technical schools. That's the gist of the bill, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The dry needler himself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. I'd like to just address a question was asked yesterday about the dry needling bill, House Bill 145. It was regards to how many states allow this. Most states do allow dry needling. They're silent on the issue, but they do allow it. 18 states specifically allow dry needling, and there are 3 states that specifically do not allow, and they are Nevada, Utah, and Tennessee. And I would further like to ask for more consideration of House Bill 145.
Any questions? Got 17. Who's 17? Ms. Brennan.
Not to belabor the point, but the 3 states that you mentioned that disallow the practice, can you tell us why that is?
I have it here, I think, on a couple of them. No, I do not. I'm sorry.
Ms. Cooper.
Needles.
They have a what?
They just don't allow them to use, sorry, Mr. Chairman, they just don't allow them to use anything that involves needles.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. McKellar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 bills this morning. The first is a modified open rule, House Bill 71. It was on the floor of the House last year and passed 155 to 0, so it is a simple little bill that wasn't even controversial. It allows local governments to decide where and when, and particularly what ages people may ride bicycles on sidewalks. It just simply opens up a current restriction in the law for only 12 and under. It's a constituent-driven bill. I had someone call me and ask me just to allow them to lobby their local governments to allow bicycles on sidewalks. That's House Bill 71. Shall I go and do the second?
Let's ask questions. Anybody got questions on riding on the sidewalk? Have you got a question about riding on the sidewalk with your bicycle?
Sidewalks are for walking, I thought, not for riding bikes.
Yes, and I agree. There are places that it's inappropriate to ride bicycles on sidewalks, particularly in downtown business districts where you wouldn't have skateboards or rollerblades or bicycles. But like I said, this was a constituent-driven request, and particularly in Athens, we have a lot of outlying areas, and because of our local ordinances, anytime you build a road, you have to build a sidewalk. These sidewalks are rarely, if ever, used, and a 75-year-old constituent of mine very honestly said, look, I'm old, I'm slow, I don't like traffic, and I don't want to ride with cars. This doesn't even allow me, the way the law is right now, it doesn't even allow me to lobby my local commission to designate some sidewalks as appropriate for me to bicycle on. And I don't want to break the law when I ride on the when I ride my bicycle on the sidewalk. I want to have the option of convincing my locals to allow me to. And that's the impetus for the bill.
Any other questions? Go to the next one.
House Bill 101, after I brought the bicycling bill last year, House Bill 101, the bicycling community in Georgia contacted me and asked if I would carry this bill as well. And this is 8 pages, not that many changes, but it simply updates our current code with regard to bicycles and bicycle lanes and bicycle safety equipment. And I'll be happy to go through all of the changes. The purpose of it is it defines bicycle lanes in the first portion. It indicates that when you're in a bicycle lane, it defines who has the right-of-way, cars or bikes. It indicates that bicycle lanes are an area where cars are not allowed to park. It demands that bicycles ride with the flow of traffic, because some people think that it's safer to ride against traffic, which is not the case. So it makes it clear in our law that you're supposed to ride with traffic. It clarifies safety equipment for a child under 1 year of age, because there is a requirement that anyone under 16 wear a helmet, but they do not make helmets for children under 1 because a child under 1 can't support the weight of a helmet on their head. So it simply says that's inappropriate and they shouldn't be allowed to be on bicycles. It cleans up the definition of hazards to safe cycling on page 4. It requires that bicycles have lights that are visible from 300 feet front and back, and updates some of the provisions with regard to reflectors, given the recent improvements in technology of bicycles. That is, most bicycles now don't even come, high-end bicycles don't come with pedals. And there's a requirement in our law that pedals on bicycles have reflectors. And so it simply updates the law with regard to the improved technology of bicycles. It's just an area of the law that we have not visited in some time that needs to be updated for. For instance, GDOT had an amendment to the bill that we did in subcommittee. They are fine with the bill now, and it sort of defines what they're doing with regard to the bicycle lanes that they in fact have regulations on now. So it brings all us up to date on bicycling technology and requirements. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? 17. Carla, Ms. Brennan.
I'm on a roll today. In my area, I have a significant issue with regard to bikers that ride in packs. They park, and then there's maybe 200 bicyclers that ride down the road all across the lanes. And how is this bill and your other bill going to address that continued concern that they don't follow the laws? Now they're going to be allowed to ride on sidewalks, and they're going to be allowed to ride in packs. How are your bills going to address that concern?
Those are already against the law. A bicycle's not allowed to get in the lane and take the lane. Even 3 bicycles or 200 bicycles are not allowed to ride in a pack and take the lane. They should be riding single file as far to the right on the road as practicable. And so there's already a law in the books against what you're talking about that your local law enforcement should enforce. In Athens, we have a large bicycling community as well, and they have in fact engaged in that kind of behavior, and there's been an outcry from citizens, and we contacted the police, and now they've basically warned the groups to say, if we catch you doing this, we're going to stop all 50 of you and we're going to give you all a ticket. And that has put an end to it. So there are already laws on the books to prevent what you're talking about. These are neither designed nor would be effective in dealing with the problem you're suggesting. It's a different issue, and one that we already have laws on the books to address.
You have others.
Simple bill.
Mr. Roberts. Mr. Roberts. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I was trying to read portions of the bill, and I should have already read it ahead of time, and I do apologize for that. Representative McKillop, under Section 2, I understand it's talking about here that as far as being in a bicycle lane and this, that, and the other. But one of the problems I have, and it occurs a lot here, especially in downtown Atlanta, is you're sitting in traffic, and you've got bicycles that ride between vehicles, or they'll ride down the right-hand side, not in a bicycle lane, and they pull up, and then they go on across. When you're sitting in a red light, they run the red light. And it almost is like it's acceptable behavior. And what I'm concerned about is that we're getting to the point to where bicyclists have more of a advantage on the roadway than people in vehicles. In other words, they've got more rights than we do in our vehicles. And I'm just concerned that any time that we get to giving them more and more power, that they continue to abuse it. So.
Okay, first of all, I agree with you completely. There are two problems with that, and this is more than anything the same thing with Representative Drenner's question. These are enforcement issues. It is illegal for bicycles to ride between cars in the lane, just like motorcycles. If a bicycle lane is not provided, the bicycle should stop behind the furthest back car from a red light and wait. And if they are not doing that, they are passing on the right, and they should be given a ticket. And that is local law enforcement. If they would issue a few tickets, believe me, the biking community is not that big. The word would go out, and they would stop doing that. In the event there's a bicycle lane, then just like, look, when I'm sitting in traffic and I'm on my way here from Athens and all those people in the HOV lanes are blowing by me, I really wish I were over there. Same thing with a bicycle lane. If GDOT has built one, or if your local community has built one, that is an area that they are allowed to go by you on the right. But that is the only area. And so I agree, there are plenty of enforcement problems with regard to bicycles and what they do. And if we started issuing some tickets, and that's what we did in Athens, and it puts an end to that problem. And it's just convincing your law enforcement that, hey, these are laws and these people need to abide by them as well. And if somebody's riding between two lines of traffic, that is a violation, and they should be ticketed. And so, again, this has nothing to do with that. It doesn't provide them anything that they don't already have. It just clarifies. This does not expand the power of the bicycling community. It just updates the laws to reflect what we're already doing. GDOT is already building bicycle lanes. They already have, you know this, they already have specs on how to build bicycle lanes. All this does is make it clear what's going on in a bicycle lane, and says things like, okay, you can't park your car in a bicycle lane. I mean, that's obvious. That has to do with passing a bicycle or blocking their right of way. And so it doesn't add anything to the power of the bicycling community. It just defines it.
Mr. Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author, just a small question. On page 5, lines 150 and 1 through 154, current state of the law, as I read it, requires you to have a reflector that's visible from 300 feet. This requires you now to have a light that's visible from 300 feet?
Correct. A light's much more safe.
I get that. I'm just concerned, if I'm riding a bike at night, or my kids are riding a bike at night, this puts a duty on you to have a light versus a reflector. I mean, reflectors have been on bikes for years and years. It just seems to me perhaps it's a consideration that, is a light a little bit of an overreach?
Well, you already have to have a light on your bicycle at night.
On the front.
You already have to have one on the front, and so having one on the back, I don't think is a significant reach. It just simply it takes into account the fact that pedals no longer get sold on new bikes, and in fact, it puts an extra burden on the bicycling community. Yes, to say if you're going to be on the roads, which are built for cars mostly, you are going to make sure that you are visible from the back.
And I raise the question because, Mr. Chairman, just briefly, sometimes when we think of cyclists, we think about those hardcore cyclists that get out on our highways and byways. They're wearing the attire, they've got the helmet, whether they're traveling in packs or not. Isn't it true this also applies to folks who are more recreational bikers that are riding the old bike they've had for 20 years around town or around the neighborhood perhaps? This still applies to them. I'm just concerned that we not overreach in that area.
I understand. If they're riding at night, I think a light's probably a good idea.
We got several questions. We're going to have shorter answers and shorter questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Smith,
and thank you, Representative McKillop. Just one question. I've looked at both bills. Does it address the signaling sound that most bicycles have to have if they approach someone from the rear, a pedestrian or on a street, where you can honk a horn, or with a car, you used to have signals, sound signals on bikes. Is that anywhere?
There's no requirement in the law for a sound signal that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
The Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McKillop, I think you answered the first question before. I just want to confirm. I understand that in Section 2 of the bill, as pointed out by the Chair of Transportation, that where you have a delineated lined bicycle lane, that automobile traffic will go ahead and yield to bicycle traffic in that bicycle lane. That makes sense. There's nothing in your bill, I think I heard you say, that will go ahead and provide any more priority for bicycle traffic over automobile traffic where there is not a bicycle lane. Is that a correct statement?
That's correct.
Okay. Just a very quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman. I just had noticed on page 3, beginning section C, lines, the section beginning on line 79 on page 3 of the substitute. I read that to mean that we're then going to prohibit the ability of bicyclers to transport an infant under age 1 in one of those trailer deals that we've seen. Is that a correct statement?
That is correct.
And what's the priority behind that?
Well, there's another part of our law that says any child under 16 operating or being carried on a bicycle has to wear a helmet. They don't make helmets for children under 1 because it is unsafe for them to add that extra weight to a head they really can't support anyway. And so if we're going to have a 16 and under helmet law, you cannot have a law that demands a child wear a helmet that they don't make.
Okay.
And so it just makes the law make sense in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We're done.
Appreciate your favorable consideration.
Thank you. We're going to do members' bills now. Mr. Bearden, you're at the top of my list, so you start. You're not, wait a second. My co-pilot's forgot where you are. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully with this explanation I'll cut off any questions, but with House Bill 91, this bill went through a lot of changes in the committee process, but final product with this bill, if someone is convicted of one of the deadly 7 crimes, they shall surrender their license, driver's permit, or ID card to DDS, and for a $25 fee receive a new license, permit, or ID card with a demarcation of either a number or a letter. We're going to leave that up to DDS. That will identify them to law enforcement as a convicted felon. The demarcation will remain on the license throughout the parole or probation period, and once they have completed their sentence, they can get a new license for a $25 fee to be issued back to them without the demarcation. This is a public safety issue, and it passed through the committee, I believe, unanimous, and I ask for your favorable support.
Is there amendment to this bill?
Yes, sir. There is a rules amendment on the bill. It's AM 350221. It's on your desk. That first amendment that you see would take place on line 68 of the bill. We just accidentally had the wrong code section from 40-5-38. It should have been 40-5-39. And on lines 41 and line 65 of the bill, before the word code, it should have stated subsection H of code. And that would have been section 17-10-1.
Okay.
That's the amendments.
You have a couple of questions? Do we have questions? I've got.
Thank you. Mr. Bearden, what is the public safety issue that this bill addresses?
One of the issues when our law enforcement officers stops vehicles on the streets, they have absolutely no idea to who they're stopping. this would allow them to know that the people they stopped have been convicted of a very serious offense, and this demarcation would only continue during the sentencing phase, which would be the probation or probe period until it ends. A lot of these folks that they're stopping that may have committed one of these 7 deadlies, if they have a warrant out there for them or they committed a crime, these can turn into some of the most volatile situations a law enforcement officer could deal with. And I would say it's just basically almost leveling the field to provide greater protections for our law enforcement community.
May I ask an additional question?
Yep.
Are there other states that have imposed these laws, and have they faced any legal challenges?
I'm not familiar, but I said there was a lot of work through the committee when this bill was first done. It was going to have a big red stamp of convicted felon across the license. We took that out, did the number of the lettering with DDS. It was also going to be every felony. So if you got caught shoplifting 3 times, that's a felony. That would have been on the license. But through the hard work of the committee, we went just with the 7 deadlies because those are the most violent offenders out there.
And I may ask one final question. Is there any information or evidence about, given the necessity to use your driver's license for the transaction of simple business, is there any concern that this will lead to heightened scrutiny and create unintentionally a constitutional interference with certain rights, because there are going to be, you have to use this when you try to cash a check or when you are applying for a rental car. Is there any concern about any discrimination that will come from this that may be impermissible under state or federal constitutional directives?
No, ma'am. That's one of the things we worked with the criminal defense attorneys on, and that's why we took the big red stamp of convicted felon off there and use a number or lettering scheme. That way, if you got a license to drive a motor vehicle and maybe a motorcycle, your license should say Class CM, it may just simply say Class CM1 or CMA. And that letter or number identify it to the police officers, but no one else probably have any idea what that letter or number scheme means.
Thank
you. Mr. Willard?
No, I'm not at the bill.
Okay. Mr. Earhart?
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to understand the author. I believe he asked for a rules amendment. Is this traveling as a modified structured amendment that will be voted on the floor? Isn't it true if it was a rules amendment, it would be a fully incorporated amendment and the substance of the bill?
As well as I can tell, you know. So you are correct. It is traveling as modified structure, yes. So it's not, it will just be, it will not be a rules amendment.
It'll be amendment allowed on the floor.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Mr. Willard. You ready?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm bringing before the committee House Bill 30. Let me give the committee a little bit of background. This is the same bill that was passed by this House in 2009, which is called the Restrictive Covenant of Employment Bill. There was then passed in 2010 a resolution of a constitutional amendment which provided for this act to become law upon passage of that amendment. The problem we had was that there was a disconnect between the enactment clause of the statute in 2009 and the language of the amendment that was passed as a resolution in 2010, putting this amendment on the ballot to be voted on. What happened is, under the act and statute that was passed by the General Assembly and signed by the governor, it stated that this statute would become law upon the approval of the constitutional amendment by the voters. Then when we passed the constitutional amendment in 2010, that language did not address when the amendment would become effective. Therefore, under our state constitution, the amendment did not become effective until January 1. Therefore, we had a disconnect saying that the statute becomes effective upon passage, but the amendment did not become effective until January 1, if I've explained that or confused everybody. The problem we have is we have statutory law in Georgia that does say that if a statute becomes law and there is not constitutional support for that statute, it is void. It is void ab initio, and it cannot be revived by amendment. Therefore, we came to the conclusion that the only way, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, that this statute could now effectively become law would require a reintroduction and passage of the statute that was already approved, yes, by both houses in 2009 and signed by the governor. So the reason we're bringing this forward at this time is to complete the need that we have for the statute to be reenacted by the General Assembly and signed by the governor. I'll be happy to take any questions.
I have a question from Mr. Lindsay.
Yeah, the bottom line, if I understand, Mr. Chairman, is that we passed the constitutional amendment, but we don't have enabling legislation to support it. And if we don't pass this bill, there won't be any enabling legislation.
That's correct. That's the bottom line. Isn't it true?
Isn't it true?
Any other questions? All right. Okay. Does anyone else on the committee have a bill out here? All right. We'll set a calendar. Let's see. HB 145, the needling under modified structure. Do I hear move? Move. Any objection? HB 91 under modified structure with an amendment number AM 3350221. Have moved. I hear. But I want to move on the amendment first.
Move.
Any objection? Now move on HB 91. Do I hear move?
Move.
One objection. Voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay. HB 130 under the open.
Move.
No. Modified open? I've got it. Okay, modified open. I had it under open. Modified open.
Move.
Any objection? Okay, HB 99 under modified open.
Move.
Any objection? Okay. And HB 101 under open.
Move.
Any objection? Raise the hands on this one. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Those who object, same sign. It's on. That is the calendar. Thank you.